someone standing in the bedroom doorway. He flipped on the light, then flipped it off. I woke up my husband, and this guy walked out of the apartment. My husband ran out after him. I went to the kitchen and got a knife and ran after my husband. Turns out the woman who lived there before us had broken up with her boyfriend and moved without telling him, or getting back his key. I guess he came back to see her at 3 in the morning. We had a rooster who was pretty aggressive, but he watched the rest of the chickens. He was so aggressive, though, that only certain people could go near him. Otherwise, he'd attack and spur. One night, we woke up to what sounded like a young girl screaming at the top of their lungs. We ran outside to see what it was, and old Bok Bok, his name, was walking around decapitated. He'd picked a fight with a raccoon and lost, but that sound he made that night still just haunts my dreams sometimes. When I was about 4, my neighbor would come over to play boy-girlfriend. He would kiss me and touch me, etc., and say we were practicing. Only, this wasn't another little kid, he was 13. At the time I thought it was just a game. Looking back though, it's pretty horrific. He's a Christian minister now, married with kids. Some days it's harder to think about than others. A couple of friends of mine hung out a few times with the cool teacher, and drank beer and watched pornos with him. We were probably 12 to 13 at the time. At first I was jealous that I hadn't been invited, but later I realized how screwed up this was. There was once a cougar running next to my car, and for some reason, it just committed suicide right under the side of my car. I wasn't sure if my car was messed up, but I was too terrified to go out and check. Eventually, my 18-year-old brain decided I should check. It was dead, but looking back, that was a really dumb move on my part. Me and my friend were talking about unfair punishments our parents gave us as kids, and a friend of mine said, "Yeah, like that time my dad got so angry he put my dog in a sack, tied it up and threw it in the river." Yeah, what? One of my first trauma calls as a 911 operator was an SUV that wrapped its front end around a huge tree in a city boulevard median. It was 2 couples vacationing from the East Coast. The husbands were in the front, the wives in the back. The wives were fine, but both husbands were impaled a la Wash from Firefly to their seats. We had to take the steering column with the driver. The steering wheel had bent on his chest, the column buckled and then snapped. It went under the steering wheel and through his belly. The passenger had some sort of debris through him. And surprise, surprise, there was red wine all over the dash. Don't drink and drive, folks. I saw my uncle, who had Down syndrome, molest my cousin, who also had Down syndrome. I didn't realize what it was until I was at his funeral. One night I woke up to 2 red, yellow eyes staring back at me. Pretty sure it was a raccoon or a deer, but I never figured it out. It's always haunted me. I never want to see those 2 glowing eyes staring at me in the dark again. I took a call from the estranged husband of a woman whose boyfriend beat her to death with a candlestick holder in her home, and then proceeded to plug all the drains, turn on the faucets, and flood the house. She was discovered a few days later when the husband dropped off their kids. Boyfriend drove into oncoming traffic after killing her, but survived. When I was 4 or 5, my best friend told me her cousin choked her until she passed out because she wouldn't take her clothes off. It wasn't a scary memory to me at that age, but it horrifies me now. My laptop screen lighting up. It would be normal, except I closed my laptop before heading to bed. Local grocery store years ago had a high schooler working at it, as many do, but he was murdered and run through the store's meat grinder. Whoever did it was never caught and the store closed. My cousins would shut me in the meat locker with fresh deer carcasses when they would come back from hunting. The light switch was on the outside, as well as the door handle. 10 years ago, a woman called 911 from the JCPenney parking lot, claiming to have just given birth. She had a baby in her back seat and the umbilical cord and everything. Took her to the hospital and it was obvious she had not just given birth. They found the real mother of the baby dead on a popular walking trail at a park in town. The woman had cut the baby out of the other's stomach and tried to pass it off as her own. As far as I know, the baby survived. A kindergarten teacher would lock students in what she called the monster closet if they misbehaved. The closet had no light but had a speaker that the teacher would play noises on and would occasionally bang on the door. There was supposed to be a picture of a monster in the closet, but that picture was never recovered. The story only really broke out after a kid pissed themselves in the closet and broke their nose bashing their head against the door trying to get it to open. The only issue is that the teacher was told about the investigation weeks before it was actually conducted, so there was no physical evidence, just witness statements from kindergarten-age kids. Another story is from middle school. A popular girl got pregnant and everyone assumed it was her boyfriend. Nothing too major there, but whatever. People bullied the boyfriend, saying that he ruined her life and other awful things. He was kicked off the football team and everything. A year later, he kills himself, and the girl comes out and says the baby wasn't his, but was actually her grandpa's, and that he is in jail right now, but she is deciding to keep the baby. I've got two stories from my town up in mid-northern Mississippi. One time, a guy threw boiling oil on his wife because he thought she was possessed by the devil, all because she talked back to him. Another time, this guy chopped his wife's arm off with an axe, and she walked around with a fake arm made out of pantyhose for years before she died. Alright, friends and I booked a cabin on a lake in Maine. It was remote, like no cell service, no landline, no cable TV, no internet. For entertainment, there was a huge library of VHS tapes. While hungover on the second morning, we watched a couple of 80s movies and random cartoons. After about 25 minutes into The Princess Bride, the video cuts over to the interior of a totally barren house. Exposed rafters, no carpeting over the plywood floors, bare light bulbs. There were a few scraggly-looking dogs running around. The place was super creepy. The video was shot from someone's point of view. The person was telling Minka that she was the cutest over and over. Minka, Minka, you're the cutest. Then the person, gender unknown, starts encouraging the dog to hump his or her hand. We were all scared/scandalizing after watching this, and talk about it to this day, 10 years later. When I was a freshman in high school, I was friends with this kid who was very sheltered. His mom was overbearing and overprotective, but his stepdad was really weird and mentally out there. My friend definitely thought his stepdad was on drugs. In my house, I had my computer set up in the kitchen where I would play City of Heroes, and wow. My friend was over one night sitting next to me while we're playing video games, and out of nowhere we heard a really loud noise coming from the bushes outside. As we looked out the window, his stepdad popped out of the bushes and yelled, "E.T. come home," and ran away. We both just sat there, just flabbergasted at what we just saw. I remember the look in his face, and he looked mentally deranged or strung out. This is one of many times where his stepdad has popped out on us to yell things and run away. I'm sure this guy is mentally unstable and was stalking his stepson. I remember when I was really young, like 4 or 5, playing outside with a bunch of kids in the neighborhood, like you do. Some random dude showed up with a video camera and just started filming us. Someone asked him about it, and he said we were going to be on the news. I was really excited about this and watched the news that night. The video of some kids playing never showed up. Went to bed at midnight, woke up in searing pain at 2 in the morning. Such grave pain that I thought my appendix had burst. Flipped on the lights to take a Tylenol, only to find I had rolled over a black widow spider that had bit me. My sister woke up in the middle of the night to her cat giving birth on top of her.